Why you were never born, let me tell you something that will fundamentally disturb you. Something that physics has known for over a century, but that nobody has properly explained to the general public. You were never born. I don't mean this metaphorically. I don't mean this in some mystical or spiritual sense. I mean this as a direct consequence of what we know about the structure of space-time, about quantum mechanics, about the nature of identity and consciousness. The event you call your birth, that moment your parents celebrate every year, that date on your passport and your driver's license, it doesn't exist. Not in the way you think. Not as a beginning, not as a starting point, not as the moment you came into existence. I'm Leonard Susskind, and I've spent 50 years thinking about the deepest questions in physics. And I can tell you with complete confidence that the concept of birth, the idea that there was a moment before which you didn't exist and after which you did, is one of the most persistent and catastrophic misunderstandings humans have about reality. Let me start with the most obvious problem, a problem so fundamental that it should have occurred to everyone, but somehow never does. When exactly were you born, you might say, well, that's easy. I was born on a specific date at a specific time. My birth certificate says so. The hospital recorded it. My mother remembers it. But what exactly happened at that moment? You emerged from your mother's body, that's true. But you existed before that moment. You existed in the womb. For 9 months, you were there, growing, developing. Your heart was beating. Your neurons were firing. You were responding to sounds, to light, to your mother's voice. Were you not you during those 9 months? So maybe birth isn't the beginning. Maybe conception is the beginning. The moment the sperm fertilized the egg. The moment the unique combination of DNA, that defines you came into existence. That's when you started, right? But here's the problem. That fertilized egg, that single cell, it shared almost nothing with the person you are now except for DNA. It had no brain, no consciousness, no thoughts, no experiences, no memories. It couldn't see or hear or feel. In what sense was that cell you? If I showed you a picture of that cell and a picture of you today, no one would say those are the same entity. They share genetic information, that's all. And even that genetic information, is it really the defining feature of you? Identical twins share the same DNA. Are they the same person? Of course not. They're different people with different experiences, different memories, different personalities. So DNA can't be what makes you you. There must be something else. Maybe it's your brain. Maybe you are your brain. And maybe you began when your brain began, but when did your brain begin? The neural tube that becomes the brain starts forming around 3 weeks after conception. But it's not a brain yet. It's a tube of cells. The first neurons appear around week 5, but they're not connected. They're not doing anything that resembles thinking. The cerebral cortex, the part of the brain responsible for consciousness and higher thought, doesn't even begin to form until week 8, and it's not functional in any meaningful sense until much later. Here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Newborn babies, infants just hours old, they don't have the kind of consciousness you have now. Their brains are unfinished. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for self-awareness, for planning, for abstract thought, it won't be fully developed until their mid-20s. 20s, that's not a typo. Your brain wasn't finished until you were around 25 years old. So if you are your brain, and your brain wasn't complete until 25, in what sense were you born on your birthday? The entity that emerged from your mother was a biological system with a partially constructed brain. It wasn't you. Not the you that exists now. Not the you that's watching this video and understanding these words. Let me push this further. Let me push it to the point where it becomes truly disturbing. Because the problem isn't just about when you began. The problem is about whether you exist at all in the way you think you do. Consider this. Every atom in your body is replaced over time. Your skin cells last about 2 to 3 weeks. Your red blood cells last about 4 months. Even your bone cells are replaced over a period of about 10 years. The atoms that make up your body right now are not the same atoms that made up your body 10 years ago, not a single one. You are literally made of different stuff than you were a decade ago. So if you are your atoms, you are not the same person you were 10 years ago. You are a different collection of matter that happens to have continuity of form and memory with a previous collection of matter. This is not philosophy. This is physics. Chemistry, this is biology. The matter that constitutes you is in constant flux. You are not a thing, you are a process, you are a pattern of organization that persists through time while the underlying material changes completely. Think about that. You are not made of the same stuff you were made of as a child. The atoms that formed your baby body are scattered across the planet now, in the air, in the ocean, in other people's bodies. And the atoms in your body now will be scattered the same way after you die. The pattern persists, the matter does not. Now here's where physics really enters the picture, because if you are a pattern rather than a thing, then the question of when you began becomes even more problematic. Patterns don't have sharp beginnings. They emerge gradually. They form through processes that unfold over time. There's no moment when a pattern suddenly exists. It fades into existence, it develops, it becomes more defined. But trying to identify the exact moment a pattern began is like trying to identify the exact moment a cloud begins. Clouds don't begin, they form, they condense, they emerge from processes. And so did you. But I haven't even gotten to the really deep physics yet. Everything I've said so far is troubling, but it still operates within the framework of classical intuition. Let me take you into relativity. Into the block universe, into the picture of reality that Einstein's physics actually describes. Because once you understand relativity, the concept of birth doesn't just become fuzzy, it becomes meaningless. In special relativity, there is no universal present moment. There is no cosmic now that separates the past from the future. Different observers moving at different velocities have different present moments. What is happening now for you is not happening now for someone flying past Earth at 90% of the speed of light. There now slices through space-time at a different angle than you're now. Events that are in your past might be in their future. Events that are simultaneous for you might be sequential for them. This is not speculation. This is experimentally confirmed physics. We test it every day in particle accelerators. We rely on it for GPS satellites. It's real. And what this means, what Einstein himself understood and wrote about, is that the past still exists. The future already exists. All of space-time, every event that has ever happened or will ever happen, exists as a four-dimensional structure. The block universe, your birth, your death, this moment right now, they're all equally real. They're all part of the structure. None of them is more real than any other. None of them is happening now in any absolute sense. They're just located at different coordinates in the four-dimensional space-time manifold. So when you ask, when was I born, you're asking the wrong question. You're assuming that birth is an event that happened in the past and no longer exists. But in the block universe, your birth still exists. It's located at specific space-time coordinates. It's as real right now as this present moment. Is every moment of your life. And so is your death. Your entire world line, from conception to death, exists as a static structure in space-time. It doesn't unfold. It doesn't happen. It simply is. This means the question of when you began loses all meaning. In the block universe, you don't begin. You exist as a four-dimensional object, a world line, a thread through space-time. Asking when you were born is like asking where the equator begins. The equator is a circle. It doesn't begin anywhere. It just exists as a complete shape. Similarly, your world line exists as a complete structure. It has a first moment and a last moment, but those moments exist in the same way every other moment exists. None of them is special. None of them is the real moment when you started. But wait, I can hear the objection forming. Even if the block universe is real, even if my world line exists as a complete structure, there's still a first moment of that world line. There's still a beginning, even if that beginning exists eternally in space-time. That mean I was born at that first moment? And the answer is no, because what counts as the beginning of your world line depends on what you mean by you. And here's where quantum mechanics enters the picture in a way that destroys any remaining intuition you might have. In quantum mechanics, particles don't have definite properties until they're measured. An electron doesn't have a definite position until something interacts with it in a way that reveals its position. Before measurement, the electron exists in a superposition of all possible positions. It isn't just uncertainty about where the electron is. The electron genuinely doesn't have a position. Position isn't a property it possesses until measurement. Now, you might think this only applies to tiny particles, but you're made of tiny particles. Every atom in your body is a quantum system. Every electron, every proton, every neutron obeys the laws of quantum mechanics. At the fundamental level, you are a quantum system. What does this mean for the concept of birth? It means that the atoms that supposedly came together to form you at conception didn't have definite properties before they interacted. An egg that merged were themselves quantum systems in superposition. The specific configuration that resulted, the specific you that emerged, wasn't determined until quantum decoherence locked in specific outcomes through interaction with the environment. But here's the disturbing part. Quantum decoherence doesn't happen at a single moment. It's a process, a gradual process of information leaking from the quantum system to the environment. So even at the quantum level, there's no sharp moment when you began. There's a gradual process of quantum possibilities collapsing into classical reality. And that process doesn't have a beginning point any more than a cloud has a beginning point. Let me push this even further, because I want you to understand just how deep this problem goes. Consider the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. In this interpretation, which many physicists, including myself, take seriously, every quantum measurement causes the universe to branch. Every possible outcome of every quantum event actually occurs in some branch of the universal wave function. If this is true, and there are strong theoretical reasons to think it might be, then there isn't one you. There are countless yous. Every quantum event that could have affected your development from conception onward created branches where different versions of you exist. Some of those branches have versions of you that are very similar to the you reading this. Others have versions that are completely different, and all of them are equally real. In the many worlds picture, asking when you were born isn't just meaningless because of the block universe. It's meaningless because there is no single you to have been born. There's an infinite branching tree of use, all emerging from quantum events, all equally real, all having different experiences and different histories. The you that's watching this video is just one branch of an incomprehensibly vast structure of possible use. And none of those branches has a clear beginning because quantum branching doesn't have sharp starting points either. Now I want to address something that might seem like a way out of this problem. You might say, okay, maybe there's no sharp moment of birth in physics. Maybe the boundaries are fuzzy. But surely there's a fuzzy region where I began. A period of time during which the process of my becoming started, conception to early infancy, something like that. Can't we just accept fuzzy boundaries and move on? And the answer is no, because the fuzziness isn't just temporal. It's not just about when, it's about what. The problem is that there is no clear answer to what exactly was born. What is the thing that you claim came into existence at birth? Your body. Your body is just atoms, and those atoms existed before conception and will exist after your death. They weren't born, they just temporarily arranged themselves into a pattern. Your DNA is information, and information doesn't have birth dates. It's copied and transmitted and modified, but it doesn't come into existence from nothing. Your consciousness, we don't even know what consciousness is. We don't know how it arises from brain activity. We don't know when it begins or if it's continuous or if it's even a single thing. How can something be born if we can't even define what that something is? Here's what I think is actually going on. And this is my interpretation, informed by 50 years of thinking about physics, but still an interpretation. I think the concept of birth is a useful fiction, a social construct, a way of organizing our experience and our legal systems and our emotional attachments. It's not a physical fact about reality. It's a story we tell ourselves because we need stories. Babies emerge from mothers. That's a physical fact. But the idea that this emergence is the beginning of a new person, a new self, a new conscious entity, that's a narrative. It's a way of carving up the continuous flux of reality into discrete chunks that our minds can handle. Think about how arbitrary the concept of birth actually is. In some legal systems, you become a person at birth. In others, at conception. In some contexts, viability outside the womb matters. In others, brain activity. These are all different ways of drawing a line, and none of them corresponds to a fundamental physical boundary. They're all conventions. Useful conventions, important conventions for medical ethics and law, but conventions nonetheless. The same arbitrariness applies to death, by the way. When exactly do you die? When your heart stops, hearts can be restarted. When your brain stops, brain activity can cease and resume. When your last neuron fires, neurons die individually over time. Sharp boundary at death any more than there's a sharp boundary at birth. Both concepts are approximations that our minds impose on a continuous physical process. Let me bring this back to the deepest level of physics, the level where space and time themselves emerge from something more fundamental. Because at this level, the concept of birth becomes not just fuzzy, not just arbitrary, but truly meaningless. In quantum gravity theory we don't yet fully understand but are working toward, space-time itself is not fundamental. It emerges from underlying quantum degrees of freedom. In approaches like loop quantum gravity or string theory, space and time are approximate concepts that work well at large scales but break down at the Planck scale at distances of 10 to the minus 35 meters and times of 10 to the minus 43 seconds. At these scales, there is no time. There is no before and after. There are just quantum correlations in some more fundamental structure. If space-time itself is emergent, if time is not fundamental, then the concept of being born at a particular time doesn't just become problematic. It becomes a category error. You're asking a question that assumes time is fundamental when time is actually derived. It's like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question assumes a framework that doesn't apply at that limit. What I'm telling you is that physics, as we currently understand it, simply does not support the intuitive concept of birth. There is no moment when you came into existence because existence isn't a binary property that gets switched on at a moment. There is no sharp boundary between you and you because you are not a thing with sharp boundaries. You are a process, a pattern, a four-dimensional structure in space-time, a branch of a quantum wave function, an emergent phenomenon arising from underlying physics that we don't fully understand. Does this mean you don't exist? No, you exist. You're watching this video, you're thinking about what I'm saying, you have experiences and memories and a sense of self. All of that is real. What's not real is the story you tell about when all of that started. The idea that there was a moment before which you were nothing and after which you were something. That story is fiction. Useful fiction, comforting fiction, but fiction. And here's what I find most profound about all of this. Once you accept that you were never born in any fundamental sense, you have to also accept that you will never die in any fundamental sense. The same arguments apply. If there's no sharp moment when you began, sharp moment when you end. Your world line in space-time has a first point and a last point, but both of those points exist eternally in the block universe. The pattern that is you will disperse, the atoms will scatter, the process will stop, but the structure that was your life exists forever in space-time. You don't wink out of existence at death any more than you winked into existence at birth. You just stop having new space-time coordinates added to your world line. I know this is a lot to absorb. I know it goes against every intuition you have about yourself and your life and your mortality. But this is what physics says, what relativity and quantum mechanics imply about the nature of existence and identity and the boundaries of the self. We were never born because birth requires a sharp boundary that physics doesn't provide. We will never die for the same reason. We exist as four-dimensional structures in an eternal space-time block, as branches of a universal wave function, as patterns in the flux of matter and energy that constitutes the universe. Your birthday isn't a lie. It's a useful approximation, a convenient marker in a continuous process, a social convention that helps us organize our lives and celebrate our connections. But if you want to understand what you actually are, what reality actually is, you have to let go of the idea that you have a beginning. You don't. You never did. You are not something that started. You are something that exists. Existence doesn't have a start date. The next time someone asks when you were born, you can give them the date on your birth certificate. That's the socially useful answer. But in your own mind, you can know the truth. You were never born. You have always existed in some form as atoms, as quantum fields, as information in the structure of reality. And you will always exist, scattered perhaps, transformed perhaps, but never truly gone. Because in the deepest sense, there is no coming and going. There is only being. Think about that. Really think about it, and welcome to the real universe. The universe where birth and death are stories we tell, not physical facts we discover. The universe where you are not a thing that begins and ends, but a pattern that exists. The universe where the question, when was I born, has no answer because it assumes a framework that physics has already transcended. Thank you for listening, and happy unbirthday to you, today and every day. Because in the block universe, every day is equally your birthday, and no day is.